Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. My name is Dave Tyndall. I'm the acting chief of police here in San Jose. Everybody ready to go?
Yeah.
Today, I will walk you through the timeline of events that led to the apprehension, officer-involved shooting, and death of David Lee Tovar on Thursday, January 21st, as well as the details of the confrontation that led to the shooting. Before I begin, I want to convey my deepest condolences to the Tovar family, whom I met with earlier today for the loss of David's life. I provided them a timeline for this investigative process, as well as offered assistance through a variety of sources. I know they are grieving and searching for answers in the truth. I understand that parts of the story will include things that are hard for a grieving family to hear, and the person they knew might not be the person we know. I also wish to extend my condolences to the loved ones of Russell Anthony Lewis, who was killed in Gilroy on January 3rd. Much of what I'm about to say involves Russell and many other victims that deserve answers and also the truth. Over the past 10 months, the Gilroy, San Jose, and Morgan Hill Police Departments, as well as the California Highway Patrol and Santa Clara County Sheriff's Department, have all been investigating Tovar as a suspect or person of interest in a series of crimes. These crimes have dramatically escalated in violence, and you can see the locations marked on the map we have displayed both on the screens and on the back wall over there. These crimes included many stolen vehicles, commercial and residential burglaries, kidnapping, robberies, carjacking, weapons theft, and illegal possession of weapons, assault with a deadly weapon, felony evading arrest, and at least 3 attempted murder shootings and 1 homicide that occurred on January 3rd. More than 20 victims have been impacted by what can only be described as a violent crime spree. Evidence linking Tovar to these crimes include DNA analysis, fingerprint matches, cell phone GPS, videos, and witness statements. These cases are all in various stages of investigation with the aforementioned agencies. In addition to these active cases, the Gilroy Police Department has also received multiple 911 calls of Tovar being armed in parks and public places with intent to harm others. This month, San Jose police officers were part of a multi-agency effort to connect the dots and apprehend the prolific and increasingly violent person victimizing our South Bay. Officers from Gilroy, California Highway Patrol, Sunnyvale DPS, and San Jose PD have attempted to apprehend Tovar numerous times. Each of these times, Tovar's desperately fled in vehicles at dangerous speeds and on foot from pursuing officers. On multiple occasions following police pursuits of Tovar, firearms have been found in abandoned vehicles. These include a stolen shotgun, handgun, as well as a replica firearm. Physical evidence has been collected and positively linked Tovar to these firearms left behind. 4 weeks ago, on December 29th, San Jose police recovered a stolen vehicle in our city that contained jail booking paperwork belonging to Tovar, as well as a loaded shotgun and additional ammunition. A fingerprint lifted from the shotgun was matched to Tovar. A warrant was subsequently issued for Tovar in relation to this case. On January 1st, 2021, Gilroy PD responded to a shooting between 2 groups of people on Fairview Drive. When they arrived, the suspects had fled and no victims were located. Multiple spent shell casings were located that included different calibers and were collected at the scene. Tovar was linked as a primary suspect in this shooting. On January 3rd, Gilroy PD responded to another shooting on Fairview Drive. The victim, identified as Russell Anthony Lewis, was shot at least once with a shotgun. He was transported to the hospital where he was pronounced deceased. Tovar is the primary suspect in this case. On January 5th, Morgan Hill PD responded to a shooting at Galvin Park, where an unhoused adult male was shot in the chest with a shotgun. This victim sustained life-threatening injuries, but ultimately survived. Tovar is the primary suspect in this case. On January 8th, San Jose police officers began apprehension efforts to locate Tovar. Officers were briefed with the following information. Tovar was a previously convicted felon and a documented gang member and was to be considered armed and dangerous. He was the primary suspect in 3 separate shootings in both Gilroy and Morgan Hill, one of those being a homicide. Tovar was still believed to be armed with both a shotgun and a handgun. At this time, Tovar was wanted on several felony warrants to include the following charges: felon in possession of a firearm, carrying a loaded firearm in a public place or vehicle, possession of ammunition by a prohibited person, 4 counts of possession of a stolen vehicle, 4 counts of first-degree burglary, 2 counts of grand theft, and vandalism. On this date, San Jose officers located Tovar, but he drove so erratically that in the interest of public safety, he was let go. On January 12th, San Jose police were notified by the Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety that they attempted to stop a vehicle believed to be occupied by Tovar. Sunnyvale DPS pursued the vehicle at speeds exceeding 120 miles an hour. The vehicle was able to get away and was recovered later that day in Redwood City, unoccupied. Of significance, a bullet strike was found in this vehicle. On January 14th, Gilroy police received a 911 call from a citizen reporting that Tovar was armed with rifles and handguns and talked about wanting to kill an officer next. Later that day, officers located Tovar in a 7-Eleven parking lot on East 10th Street in Gilroy and attempted to apprehend him. Tovar used his vehicle and rammed his way through the police vehicles that were blocking his exit. He was able to elude capture in this case. Officers at this point saw a duffel bag the size of a shotgun on the center console as he drove. For the safety of everyone involved, officers regrouped and prepared a plan to apprehend him at a later time. Tovar did not hesitate to use violence on police to escape capture. Thankfully, no officers were injured during this encounter. On January 21st, San Jose officers resumed efforts to apprehend Tovar and located him in an apartment complex off La Pala in San Jose. At approximately 10:25 hours, officers contacted Tovar exiting the apartments into the carport area near a vehicle. They identified themselves as police and gave Tovar commands to stop. They also instructed him to put his hands up. These commands were given by more than one officer at more than one time. Tovar immediately fled back into the interior of the apartment complex out of sight of the pursuing officers and up to the 2nd-story walkway. When he did this, he appeared to be holding something within his waistband area and his front jacket area. Tovar continued to run along the 2nd-story walkway of occupied residences and apartments and could be seen by an officer outside the building providing containment while he was running. The officer could see Tovar at a doorway reaching in his waistband and relays that information to other officers over the radio. The officers were continuing to yell, "Put your hands up, stop running." Tovar then ran along the open 2nd-floor walkway as 3 officers entered the interior of the courtyard to cut off his escape. The first officer to enter the courtyard is on the ground floor and can see Tovar running up above. He again yelled at him to stop. This elevated position gave Tovar a distinct advantage against officers on the ground. Tovar then ran along the walkway towards one officer who could see Tovar pulling what he believed to be the butt of a handgun from his jacket. Perceiving an immediate threat, 3 officers fired their department-issued rifles at Tovar. Officers approached Tovar to take him into custody and gave him multiple commands to show his hands. He did not comply. A canine officer was used with his canine partner to assist and effect the arrest. Officers called for fire and EMS and began to render immediate life-saving measures while waiting for paramedics to arrive. Tovar was transported to Regional Medical Center where he was pronounced deceased. A black and silver cell phone was recovered on the ground next to Tovar. A screwdriver was found in his pocket. No firearms were located. Each of the officers involved in this incident had their body-worn cameras turned on and recorded the actions described. The body camera footage from the incident will be released in the upcoming weeks. Tovar's criminal history convictions included resisting arrest, possession of a controlled substance, under the influence of a controlled substance, felony possession of a controlled substance for sales, possession of drug paraphernalia, resisting arrest, auto theft and auto theft with a prior conviction, felony domestic violence, grand theft, criminal threats, and violation of a domestic court order, possession of a weapon in a correctional facility, 2 counts of recklessly evading a peace officer in his vehicle, and violation of post-release community supervision. He's currently on probation/parole for felony evading a police officer while driving the wrong way in traffic out of Merced County. The Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office and the San Jose Police Department's Homicide Unit are conducting a joint criminal investigation. The case is being monitored by the San Jose Police Department's Internal Affairs Unit, the City Attorney's Office, and the Office of the Independent Police Auditor. There are a total of 3 officers involved in this officer-involved shooting. Their names will not be released due to the covert nature of their assignments. Officer 1 was not injured. He has 13 years of experience as a police officer. Officer 2 was not injured. He has 13 and a half years of experience as a police officer. Officer 3 was not injured. He has spent 15 years here with the San Jose Police Department. All 3 officers are CIT trained. They have all been placed on routine administrative leave. Regardless of the outcome of this investigation, we'll examine the facts and our tactics and search for ways that we can avoid another officer-involved shooting, given similar circumstances. If needed, we will adjust training policies and tactics to avoid a tragic outcome that no one wants to see. One of our primary goals during apprehensions of this type is to accomplish them with minimum amounts of force, while being mindful of the safety of all those involved, to include our residents, the suspect, and all of the men and women who protect the city day in, day out. This is also a tragic incident for all of the involved officers. I must stress that we cannot control the actions of violent individuals who will harm others and are willing to risk everything to escape and avoid capture. No matter how dangerous or desperate a person is in avoiding justice, we will pursue them and we will arrest them. We owe it to our community and to the victims of these violent crimes. With that, I will now take questions.
What was the context of the contact with Mr. Tovar, as far as you mentioned that the officers are not going to be publicly named because of their assignments? Could you elaborate a little bit on that, because that's going to be a point of interest for the public for why they're not being disclosed.
At this point, I mean, they are all assigned into an undercover capacity. We may look down the line and we may end up identifying them, but that's going to be something, a decision we're going to make down the line.
Can you tell us a little bit about his gang activity and those known substances that you referred to? Can you say what they were?
The majority of the controlled substances were stimulant-based. And as far as the gang activity, I'm going to leave it with Norteño gang member associate or gang member.
Could you elaborate on the stimulant?
I can't at this time.
A question about, if he was unarmed, obviously he's a bad guy, and he had been armed in the past. You looking at this and having investigated it, is there any way that this could have been avoided?
I think it absolutely could have been avoided. I think there was numerous times where Mr. Tovar could have given up. There was multiple contacts with police and multiple different circumstances. And I will be completely honest with you, I wish he'd have surrendered. I know in talking to his family that they had some concerns about some of the rumors or things that they knew that were coming out. And they'd specifically talked to him about turning himself in to the Gilroy Police Department. So to answer your question, absolutely, it could have been avoided, and I wish it had.
What can you speak to with respect to the, if you could elaborate a little bit more, because as you might imagine, there are going to be segments of the public that zero in on the fact that he was unarmed. That you find that out afterwards, what can you say to the circumstance? What can you elaborate more about the circumstances to contextualize that? What was the rationale for deciding to use deadly force when you matched up against the determination later that he did not have a firearm?
Certainly, I mean, I won't go into the specifics of the officers themselves on their decision to shoot, But I think, as we basically outlined, we knew that this was a violent individual who had been on a violent crime spree with multiple victims in different jurisdictions within the South County area. He had been matched to multiple crimes through a number of different means and ways, including DNA, including fingerprints, and including witness statements. And so I think a lot of that, sets the basis for who this individual was, especially at the time of this crime spree. A lot of these involved the weapons, shotguns, the shotgun shooting of the unhoused individual in Morgan Hill, the types of crimes that were going on in the South County that led officers to believe that he was going to be armed and that he was a violent threat not only to the residents of San Jose, but also to the men and women of the police department and every police department that he had come in contact with.
So there's no, you had alluded to the idea of reviewing tactics, that sort of thing, as a general, as a matter of course. If you could just elaborate a little bit more on the idea of, as far as messaging to the public, the idea of, you talked about the risk that he posed to the history of using firearms, but matched up against, the fact that he did not have a firearm at when he was fatally shot. If you could, I was hoping you could just kind of crystallize that for the public, why that would be, how those two things can be reconciled.
I think we always look at it, and as you know, in law enforcement in general, and I'd say specifically this police department, we review everything. And whether it be an officer-involved shooting or a pursuit or a use of force, it is something that first and foremost that we look at from every angle there is available to see if there's something that can be changed. I know in my 25-year career here, we have changed tactics numerous times on a number of different items on how we respond to certain situations. And whether that they be a call for service, whether they be a proactive event, or whether we are in pursuit of somebody who's committed violent felonies and violent crime. So in that regards, I think we're always looking at what could we do better. Are there different tactics we could deploy? In the specific cases, are different tactics that we could have deployed on this one. Unfortunately, in a situation like this, a lot of times the suspect themselves are essentially forcing the tactics to be used when they don't run. And that causes time to pause and take a look and reflect and see, is there something we could have done better in this case?
So there's no